In this episode, Golden and I discuss Halo Season 1, Full Speed Ahead.
The Omega Beam. Full power. The Omega Beam.
Welcome to the Omega Beam number 187. I'm your host, Oren Merton. Did you know that Paramount Plus has another science fiction franchise besides Star Trek? While Star Trek is their big one, of course, they also have the rights to the Halo video game. And recently, they finished their first season of the Halo TV series. As with most shows, we start out spoiler-free and quickly get into spoilers, so let's get started. I am here with Golden to talk about Halo Season 1, streaming in its entirety on Paramount Plus. So I think both of us, it's safe to say that neither of us really played the video game or necessarily knew the story going in. We'd heard some good things about it, and we decided to watch. I had pretty low expectations going in. I thought it was just going to be first-person shooter-looking combat. How about you?
I didn't have any expectations going in. I've never played the game. I've never really talked to anyone about the game. So I was just curious to see what it was about and where they were going to go with it. And before it even started, I was already hearing how so many people were very upset with the main character removing his helmet in the first episode. But for the story that they wanted to tell, that was kind of necessary in order for him to have a disconnect.
Right. Yeah, I totally get that, because obviously in a video game, keeping a helmet on the entire time allows the player to put themselves in the position of, Master Commander, no matter who they are, no matter what they look like, because the character you see on the screen is always armored.
I thought you were going to say because it's easier to animate.
Oh, maybe easier to animate too. Though I guess that would also depend to a certain degree on how much reflection they put in the helmet, the glass part of the helmet.
That can be programmed.
Yeah, I'm sure. But that's great for a game, but it's not amazing for a TV show. And number one. And number two, that had already been done in The Mandalorian, where Mando kept his helmet on for every episode but the very last one in Season 1. And he took his helmet off, I think, twice in Season 2. So The Mandalorian already has sort of established it's his religion to keep the helmet on, but he will take it off when he needs to. So I think making this character less sort of orthodox about keeping his helmet on.
Well, it wasn't
sense.
To me, it wasn't about orthodox. It was about the fact that if he wanted to have privacy, he had to disconnect. With his helmet on, he's connected.
Yeah.
They can track him. They can, there's other things that they can do.
Yeah.
And in order for him to get the answers that he wanted, he needed to be able to have some space.
Yeah. And for me, I didn't know any of the world building. I didn't know any of the kind of mythology of Halo. The good guys, the bad guys, the heroes, the villains. So I enjoyed it. I mean, it's not my favorite show, but I enjoyed it more.
Yeah, you weren't too sure even going in.
Yeah.
It's like you still weren't sure after a couple episodes if you were going to continue watching.
It's a slow build, but I'm glad I kept up with it because Pablo Schreiber, I enjoy him a lot. And I think he took he's supposed to be a character cut off from his emotions because of all the enhancements they did to him, and yet he still manages to give that character depth, and that's to his credit as an actor.
And considering the last time we saw him, he was definitely full of emotions.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Who doesn't like an over 6 foot tall leprechaun?
Exactly. So I absolutely enjoyed him in the part. I thought all the actors and all the parts were pretty good. If I were to criticize anything, I thought the woman who played the doctor, she was supposed to be an evil scientist, basically. And I appreciate that they had her not be a mustache-twirling evil scientist. I liked the character. I thought they did a good job with making her someone who was more a zealot than,
Halsey.
Halsey, the
Yeah.
character. And I thought they did a good job of making her just a zealot who is willing to do anything for her
Belief,
purpose.
yeah.
Yeah. Rather than just a mustache twirling evil villain. So I appreciated that. But I thought the actress I thought she was a bit too cold, I guess.
Oh, and I thought that was perfect for who she was portraying.
I mean, it was just a personal thing. And I also said that they talk about subplots that don't pay off.
Kwan Ha?
Yeah, so they begin the whole show by Master Commander, by the Pablo Schreiber's character rescuing
Kwan Ha.
Quan Hong, the sole survivor of this raid. And throughout the show, they seed these, 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there of her story, of what she's doing. And the last part of it, I mean, I guess we're going into spoilers because,
Yeah.
spoiler 1, 2, 3 spoilers. So at the last part of it, they left a whole lot of things up. There's this portal you have to protect, and there's these other things. And they just ended it. That was it.
All you kind of got was that she's supposed to carry on the legacy of her father.
Yeah, and she's like, okay, let's do this. And then we never hear of her again. Now, as it happens, I did not like her subplot all that much. So the fact that they did away with it doesn't bother me. But the fact that it ended like literally so abruptly with no conclusion, I was like, okay, did the writers just decide we shouldn't continue this anymore and let's go with the main plot? I mean, it felt messy. It felt like they handled that in a messy way. And I think that shows that maybe they weren't 100% certain when they started out where they wanted to go with the show. But I do think ultimately...
And again, keep in mind, we have not done any research as to see, did they actually have more of a plot to go with? Is there more of a plot in the actual game?
Right.
Does that character fit into the game? Neither one of us has actually done any research on that, and it's not something that I feel like we have to, because we're in it for this show.
Right.
Just this show. And overall, it was just a fun adventure.
Yeah. I mean, the story, it was absolutely watchable.
I liked his discovery of who he is and him actually being, under the hand of this military and realizing that he can be an individual.
Right.
And seeking out that individual and pushing that over. And someone else in his squad decides that she's going to do the same thing. She sees that he's removed a piece of himself that is keeping him connected. And she does the same thing, and she starts to have to deal with these emotions.
Right.
And the other two are like, well, we don't know, but, they're giving us this direction, but we really are with you. So I enjoyed that part of it. I enjoyed his interaction with the other human that is like him in terms of
his
being able to use...
counterpart on the enemy side. Yeah.
Yeah. Being able to use these things.
Yeah.
And be able to touch them and go places, or you still don't know with the artifacts exactly what. Mm-hmm. But there's something about him that allows him to do that. And, and the doctor saw that there was something special about him early on.
Right. Yeah, so there's enough here that is interesting and intriguing and watchable that I'll certainly, we'll both tune in for season 2 and see.
Is there season 2?
Oh, yeah.
There is? Okay.
I seem to recall that Paramount, I could be wrong on this one, but I think Paramount Plus, greenlit season 2 either before it aired or when it started airing or whatever.
It's interesting. You wonder how much did they spend on the World of Warcraft movie. And if they had done the World of Warcraft movie as a series instead,
right,
would they have had a better reception? And just not just that one, but any of the game movies. I mean, the first real game movie that I can think of that went over well was Resident Evil. I don't know if there's another one before that, but the Resident Evil franchise went for a few movies.
Right. Well, going for a few movies isn't necessarily the great yardstick, because if I recall correctly, the Mortal Kombat series went for a number of movies, and each one was considered terrible.
No, the second Mortal Kombat movie, that was it. Like I've told you, my friend and I went to go see it in the theater, and I think both of us wanted to walk out during the opening credits.
Yeah,
because it was that bad.
That's a good sign. Yeah, I saw the first one, and I was just like, okay.
The first one was just fun.
I think I don't ever need to see this again. But yeah, so it generally you'd think that video games with these days, especially with their involved plots and everything, would make great live action. But I think that, first of all, I think some games, they're interesting because of the interaction of the player and the game world, which you don't get in a movie. But also, I do think, like you said, they lend themselves better, I think, to episodes in a television show.
Yeah, because the game takes time.
Right.
I know if you're trying to do everything in 2 hours, it doesn't take 2 hours to play the game. So
Right.
I'm guessing you're not going to get everything, and it's going to be very lackluster.
Right. What's interesting is I think that board games can make decent movies because in board games you tend to play those in like short hour chunks at a time. So I think the board game movies have definitely been more interesting. I mean, Jumanji I don't think was actually a board game before. It was a book. But, it's in that genre. Clue was a fun movie.
A lot of people had a problem with Clue even.
Well, they did, but I think you can make those movies well, is the point. Because if you're talking about a 2-hour game, it's not a leap to make it a 2-hour movie. But if you're talking about a game that takes 30 hours to play,
if you've played the game Halo, you have to go into the TV show recognizing that this is not the game. This is a version of something similar to the game. If you go in just expecting to see the game.
Right, this is
go find someone on YouTube that plays the game straight through and watch that.
Right. I mean, there's an entire internet platform called Twitch, not completely, but mostly devoted to people streaming online games. And if you want to watch the game, have at it, Twitch is your friend. And
before Twitch, I actually kind of did that because I thought there was a game called Parasite Eve.
Uh-huh.
Looked really cool. And a friend of mine wanted to play it, so he'd come over and play it, and I just watch him play it because I was enjoying the story.
Right, just enjoying the plot of the game.
Yeah, so I got to watch the game. I didn't have to play the game. I got to watch someone else play it and enjoy the story and the graphics and everything else.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who enjoy watching real-time games, it's also because they play the game and they don't want to just read about cheats and clues and stuff in text. They would rather watch someone play and go, "Oh, that's what." And so then they turn around and do it themselves. But yeah, either way, I mean, there's an entire industry at this point based around that, and go for it. It's all there for you. But the series, this is scripted. This is a scripted show that uses the plot of the game as source material that it adapts from. This is not going to be the game on screen, which is better for me. I mean, as I've enjoyed it as scripted programming. Plus, it allows Paramount Plus to say that Star Trek is not the only franchise that it has, though it's certainly its big one. Well, thank you, Golden.
You're welcome.
And that's it for this episode. You can find the show notes at theomegabeam.com/187. If you liked this episode, please leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Your reviews help people who like this stuff find our podcast. If you have any comments or suggestions, please drop us a line at info@theomegabeam.com. Be good to yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you next time.
The Omega Beam. Full stop.